Let's talk about settling, not the kind that looks obvious from the outside, not the crumbling relationship or the job that's clearly misaligned or the dreams you outright gave up on. I'm talking about the quiet settling, the subtle kind, the one that creeps in when you stop dreaming out loud, when you start adjusting your wants to match what's currently available, when you shrink your desires, not because you've grown past them, but because you've stopped believing they're possible. That's the most dangerous kind of settling, the kind that numbs you, the kind that slowly silences your soul, one compromise at a time. Settling doesn't start with a big decision. It starts with tiny surrenders. You tell yourself, this is good enough. At least I have something. I don't want to seem ungrateful, and that's when it happens. You stop asking for more. You stop imagining more. And suddenly the life you're living, the one that once had so much potential, becomes a half-finished sentence. And we settle not because we don't want more, but because we've been conditioned to believe wanting more makes us selfish. That dreaming big is unrealistic. That expressing a deep soul-level hunger for joy, passion, intimacy, meaning, makes us a too much. So we begin to dial it down. We speak a little less boldly. We love a little more cautiously. We trade wonder for predictability. And here's the truth. Settling doesn't protect you from pain. It just keeps you numb enough not to feel the ache of not being alive. There's a cost to playing it safe. And that cost is yourself. Your aliveness, your creativity, your fire, all the things that made you you in the first place. When you settle, you convince yourself you're making peace, but really you're building a prison with comfortable walls. And inside those walls, your deepest desires, the ones that make your heart race and your eyes shine, they start to fade. Not because they weren't real, but because they were ignored. Desire isn't something to suppress. It's sacred. It's not a threat to your peace. It's the compass to your purpose. Your desires are the language of your soul. They speak to you in moments of stillness. They whisper, there is more. You are made for more. You were born for more. And every time you pretend you don't hear them, you drift a little further from yourself. I've seen it too many times. Brilliant, creative, kind-hearted people who once dreamed of bold, beautiful lives, slowly lowering their expectations until their dreams are barely recognizable. Not because they aren't capable, not because the door is closed, but because they decided the wanting was too painful. So they chose numbing instead. But here's the thing, numbing isn't neutral. It costs you. It costs your spark, your joy, your capacity to be moved by art, by beauty, by connection, by love. We weren't made to be half awake. We were made to burn, to feel deeply, want fully. And yes, sometimes that kind of living breaks your heart wide open, but it also gives you access to meaning, to fulfillment, to a life that is not just impressive on the outside, but resonant on the inside. You don't have to choose between gratitude and desire. You can be grateful for what you have and still hunger for what you were born to create. Gratitude is not a silencer. It's a foundation. And on that foundation, you can build your boldest life, one honest choice at a time. Because the alternative, settling, is not peace. It's quiet resignation. It's the dull ache of a life unlived. It's waking up at 2 a.m. and wondering where you went. It's wearing a smile when your heart is asking for more. It's pretending a this is fine set when fine was never the goal. I want to remind you of something today. You're allowed to want more. More truth, more connection, more intimacy, more freedom, more joy. You're allowed to raise your standards, even if people don't understand. You're allowed to walk away from what no longer serves your becoming. And you're allowed to return to yourself no matter how far you've wandered. Settling might feel safe, but only because you've forgotten how alive you felt when you were chasing something bigger than yourself. And yes, that chase requires risk, vulnerability, discomfort. But it's also where the magic lives. That's where your soul wakes back up. So today, if you feel like something inside you is restless, listen to it. If there's a quiet voice that says, you were made for more, believe it. Because that voice is your truest self, and she hasn't given up on you yet. You are not selfish for wanting more. You are not ungrateful for outgrowing what once felt good. You are not too much. You are just now remembering who you really are. Settling is not your story. It's not your legacy. And it's not the ending you were born to accept. So reclaim your desires, unnumb your heart, and remind the world and yourself that you are still on fire, you are still becoming, and you will never again call numbing peace. Fear doesn't always show up the way we expect. It doesn't always scream, do it, or you're going to fail. No, fear is far more clever than that. Fear knows how to shapeshift. Sometimes fear puts on a suit. It speaks in polished words. It uses phrases like, be realistic, let's be practical, and maybe you should wait. And the world applauds it. Because fear disguised as practicality is socially acceptable. We've built entire lives on decisions rooted in fear that we've simply rebranded as a smart. We turn down passion because it doesn't pay enough. We stay in relationships that drain us because it could be worse. We choose silence over truth because it's not the right time. But here's what most of us never stop to ask. Who told you that safety and staying small were the same thing? Who told you that the best decisions are the ones with the least risk? Who taught you that a good life is a predictable one? Fear is not the villain. Fear is a signal, a protector, a built-in alarm system. But it becomes a problem when we give it authority. When we let it drive the car instead of just sitting in the passenger seat. When fear masquerades as practicality, we start making every decision based on minimizing pain instead of maximizing purpose. We think we're playing it safe, but we're actually playing small. We call it being grounded, but really, we're afraid of flying. Here's how you know fear has taken the wheel. You talk yourself out of the very things that make your heart race. You label your dreams as impractical before you've even tried. You dismiss desire in the name of logic, even though logic is meant to serve your spirit, not silence it. We've confused caution with wisdom. But true wisdom knows the difference between a dead end and a divine delay. True wisdom knows when fear is offering you a flashlight and when it's trying to steal your map. The hard truth is this. Not every safe decision is a wise one. Sometimes the wise thing is the wild thing. Sometimes the most grounded path is the one that asks you to leap. And yes, I get it. There are bills to pay, families to support, responsibilities that can't be tossed aside because your heart wants to go chasing stars. But let's stop pretending we don't have options. Let's stop pretending practicality means abandoning everything that makes us feel alive. There is a way to build something stable without burying your soul. There is a way to be wise without being ruled by fear. And there is always a way, always, to take one brave step in the direction of your truth. The problem is not the plan. The problem is the energy behind the plan. Are you building this life out of intention or out of fear? Are you staying where you are because it's right or because it's familiar? Sometimes we call something a wise just because it makes other people feel comfortable. But their comfort isn't your calling, and their approval isn't your compass. If you ever needed permission to re-examine the choices you've labeled as a practical, this is it. What if that path you gave up on wasn't reckless, just misunderstood? What if that idea wasn't irresponsible, just a little too raw for the world around you? What if your wildest dream is the exact thing you were meant to bring to life? And yes, fear will whisper. It will whisper about failure, about judgment, about what could go wrong. But fear only speaks in hypotheticals. It has no idea what you're capable of when you stop making decisions from scarcity and start acting from worth. You were not given a voice to stay silent. You were not given dreams to dismiss them. And you were not given a life to simply get through it. You were born to create, to feel, to risk, not to spend your days convincing yourself that staying small is the grown-up thing to do. Here's what I've learned. The most meaningful transformational decisions in your life will never feel safe at first. They'll stretch you. They'll scare you. They'll challenge every part of you that wants to stay hidden. But they'll also wake you up. They'll remind you that you are not here to be practical. You're here to be real, to be authentic, to be fully breathtakingly alive. So the next time fear shows up dressed as a good judgment, ask it a question. Is this truly wise? Or just less scary? Is this who I am? Or who I think I need to be to feel safe? Am I honoring my purpose or managing my fear? Let fear ride along. But don't let it decide where you're going. You don't owe your life to comfort. You don't owe your decisions to what's easiest. And you don't owe your future to a version of you that was too afraid to believe in more. Let's stop giving fear the microphone. Let's start calling it out when it pretends to be maturity. Let's start building lives that make us feel fully awake. Not just protected, but fulfilled. Because you're not here to settle for safe. You're here to stand in your truth, even when your knees shake. You're here to say yes, even when you don't know what's on the other side. You're here to be brave, not just practical. And that kind of life changes everything. Somewhere along the road to adulthood, we were taught a quiet, dangerous lesson. That dreams are a luxury and certainty is the goal. That wild ambition is something to outgrow. That trading your deepest desires for a stable path is just what mature people do. We call it being a smart. We call it a making responsible decisions. We wrap it in words like wisdom, stability, pragmatism. But let's name it honestly. It's fear in a velvet robe. We don't stop dreaming because we outgrow them. We stop dreaming because we start believing that the pursuit of certainty is safer than the pursuit of purpose. And it's not always dramatic. You don't wake up one day and toss your dream into the trash. No, it happens subtly, slowly, quietly. You get offered a job that isn't what you love, but it pays the bills. You meet someone who doesn't fully see you, but they stay. You stop writing. Stop creating. Stop imagining. You start saying, a maybe someday instead of a why not now. And suddenly, you've built an entire life on what felt safe instead of what felt true. You traded wonder for predictability, fire for routine, expansion for control, and the world nods in approval. They tell you you're doing the right thing. But here's the hard truth no one wants to admit. Certainty isn't wisdom. It's comfort wrapped in control. It's a numbing agent disguised as a plan. It's a fence around your soul built out of a what ifs. And what does it cost? Everything. It costs your joy. It costs your creativity. It costs the version of you who once believed she could fly before the world told her to stay grounded. We're not meant to live fully in certainty. We're meant to live in truth. And truth isn't always clear-cut. Truth is messy. It's risky. It's full of ambiguity and tension and holy discomfort. But truth is alive. Certainty is not. The thing about dreams, real dreams, is that they require risk. They require not knowing. They ask you to step into unfamiliar territory, to walk forward with trembling knees and a tender heart. And when we've spent our whole lives being told that only the sure thing is the right thing, we start treating our soul's whispers like liabilities instead of instructions. We learn to betray ourselves with phrases like, let's be realistic. I can't afford to risk that. It's too late. Well, I'm too old. I should be grateful. But here's the raw truth. You can be grateful and still want more. You can be grounded and still be brave. You can be stable without silencing your soul. You're not here to play it safe. You're here to feel fully alive. To live a life that doesn't just make sense on paper, but resonates in your bones. Wisdom isn't in staying still. Wisdom is in listening to that voice inside you that never really quieted. The one that whispers at night when the world goes silent. There's more. You were made for more. And no, not more stuff, not more status, not more followers or trophies or applause. More meaning, more intimacy, more depth, more sacred alignment with who you truly are, not who you were told to become. Sometimes we confuse wisdom with weariness. We say, I'm being wise, when what we really mean is, I'm tired of being disappointed. So we give up before we even try. We dim the light before anyone can see it flicker. We become the first ones to walk away from our own dreams, just to avoid the pain of watching them fall apart. But listen closely. You were not put here to manage your existence. You were not born to check boxes and follow scripts. You are here to create, to move, to risk, to feel. The soul doesn't speak in spreadsheets. It speaks in sparks. It speaks in tears. It speaks in the ache of longing and the thrill of possibility. That's the language of purpose. And it's okay if you forgot how to speak it. It's okay if you've been silent for a while. It's okay if you've been surviving instead of living. But now it's time to come back, to unlearn the lie that certainty is the only path to peace, to remember that the most sacred things in life, love, purpose, art, faith, are all rooted in the unknown. You cannot logic your way into a meaningful life. You have to feel your way there. You have to let your heart break open to the possibility that even now, especially now, it's not too late to begin again. So let's stop calling it wisdom when it's really fear. Let's stop calling it a being responsible when it's really self-abandonment. Let's start calling it what it really is. The dream that still lives, the fire that never died, the voice that's still whispering inside you asking, what if we tried again? You are not too far gone. You are not too broken. You are not foolish for still wanting something more. You are brave for even entertaining the thought that you were made for something deeper, and you were. So the next time certainty tempts you into shrinking, pause and ask, is this wise? Or is this fear dressed up in nice clothes? Is this alignment? Or is this control? Is this safety? Or am I settling again in the name of being realistic? Your dreams deserve more than your silence. Your soul deserves more than your strategy. It deserves your yes. It deserves your trust. It deserves your presence. And no, the path won't always be certain, but it will be true. And that is always the wiser way. Let's get honest about something most people won't say out loud. Being real is painful. Not all the time, but often enough that many people choose performance over presence. We say we want to live authentically, but we forget what that actually costs. Because here's the truth. Authenticity demands discomfort. It requires you to show up without the armor, to tell the truth even when your voice shakes, to be fully seen even when it might mean being misunderstood, rejected, or judged. That's not a soft thing. That's not a poetic thing. That's a warrior thing. We live in a culture that praises polished, that worships perfect, that hands out gold stars for fitting in, for staying small, for coloring inside the lines. But authenticity refuses to be edited. It doesn't apologize for being too tender or too bold. It doesn't shrink to make others more comfortable. It doesn't round off the edges just to be liked. But here's the thing. The world doesn't always know what to do with a person who shows up unmasked. A person who says, no, thank you, to roles that don't fit. A person who dares to live according to their truth. Not what's trending, not what's acceptable, but what's real. So yes, discomfort comes with the territory. Authenticity isn't just about knowing who you are. It's about choosing to live as that person, even when it costs you, even when it means disappointing people, even when it means walking alone, even when it means risking being misunderstood for the sake of being honest. Let me say that again. Authenticity will cost you approval. It will cost you belonging in places you never belonged to begin with. It will cost you comfort, but what you get in return, you get integrity, you get peace. You get to go to bed at night knowing you didn't betray yourself to belong to something you've outgrown. That's the kind of peace no applause can offer. That's the kind of quiet strength that no curated life can fake. We don't lose ourselves all at once. We lose ourselves slowly. In conversations where we smile and nod instead of speak. In relationships where we play a part instead of living the truth. In jobs where we succeed outwardly while shrinking inwardly. We say, it's not a big deal. We say, I can live with it. But what we're really saying is, I'm willing to abandon myself for the comfort of others. You weren't made to fit a mold. You were made to be real. To be seen in the raw, unfiltered light of day. Flaws, fire, tenderness, and all. And that means you're going to feel uncomfortable. Because when you stop performing, you will see just how many spaces required you to wear a mask. And when you take it off, not everyone will clap. Some will walk away. Some will try to put it back on you. Some will call you a too emotional, a too sensitive, a too intense, a too much. Let them. You are not too much. You are finally enough for yourself. The discomfort of authenticity is nothing compared to the agony of hiding. When you live a life of constant editing, you may avoid rejection, but you also avoid connection. Because connection only happens when we are seen, really seen. And we can't be seen if we're always playing a role. Some people will only love the version of you that makes them comfortable, the agreeable version, the silent version. But the right people, the ones meant to walk with you, they will never ask you to dim just to stay. The most sacred relationships, the ones that heal, grow, and transform you, are born from truth, not performance. So when you feel that discomfort, that tightness in your chest, that trembling before you speak, that pit in your stomach before you make a change, let it mean something. Let it matter. That's not weakness. That's the stretch of your soul becoming more honest. You can choose the discomfort of being real or the slow suffocation of staying small. And yes, it's scary to show up fully. To speak your truth in rooms that prefer silence, to stop performing when you've been clapping for your own mask for years. But it's even scarier to wake up a decade from now and not recognize the life you've built. Authenticity is disruptive. It breaks cycles. It shifts dynamics. It exposes false peace. But authenticity also builds something unshakable. A foundation of self-respect so strong that no rejection can destroy it, and no validation is required to sustain it. You are not here to live half a life. You are not here to pretend. You are not here to pacify. You are not here to manage other people's comfort at the expense of your own calling. So yes, it will be uncomfortable. You will sweat. You will shake. You will lose people. You will feel lonely some days, but you will never again feel lost to yourself. And that is the greatest freedom of all. The truth is this: You can either choose the short-term comfort of fitting in or the long-term joy of living free. You can either break your own heart by pretending, or you can break open into something more honest, more powerful, more you. So be bold, be brave, be uncomfortable. Because the most authentic life is not the easiest life, but it's the only one where your soul can breathe.